Okay, let's talk about music. You know how a sad song can sometimes make you feel better? Or how a certain beat drops and you just have to move? Well, that's not just magic, it's the power of music genres. And today, we're going to break down what they are and how they work. So just picture your favorite playlist for a second. I bet you've got a wild mix on there, right? Stuff that gets you hyped up, stuff that helps you focus, and maybe some for just chilling out. Well, the reason they all sound so different comes down to one thing: genre. Think of genres as like categories or even secret codes that help us understand what we're listening to.
Yeah, exactly. A genre is basically a label we use for music based on how it sounds, what instruments are used, and its overall style. I like to think of them as road signs in the world of music. They help you find more of what you already like, but they can also point you towards something totally new you might end up loving.
All right, so to really get where today's music comes from, we got to go way back. We're starting with the roots, the great-grandparents of pretty much everything you hear on the radio today: classical and folk music.
So these two are kind of like polar opposites. On one hand, you've got classical music. It's super formal, really complex, and it's usually played by these huge orchestras. A lot of the time, it tells these big, epic stories without a single word. Then, on the other hand, there's folk music. It's way more traditional and simple. It's the kind of music that gets passed down from parents to kids, and it's all about using lyrics to tell stories about real life.
Speaking of telling stories without words, let's look at the symphony. A symphony is basically a huge, super complex piece of music written for an entire orchestra. We're talking Mozart, Beethoven, that kind of stuff. The best way to think about it, it's like a movie soundtrack without the movie. The music itself paints the picture and tells the whole story.
Okay, let's jump forward in time. We're heading to the United States in the early 20th century, which was basically a giant musical melting pot. This amazing mix of cultures created some totally new and original sounds: blues, jazz, and country.
And this all happened pretty fast. In the early 1900s, the blues started taking shape in the rural South. Then, just a little later, jazz pops up in big cities like New Orleans, with this whole new focus on making stuff up on the spot. And right around that same time, country music starts growing out of those old folk traditions we talked about. A whole new American sound born in just a couple of decades.
Now, the blues, this is a big one. You could call it the foundation for so much of what came next. It's all about expressing really strong emotions using pretty simple chord patterns, usually with a guitar leading the way. It grew directly out of the daily experiences and struggles of African Americans. Seriously, the scales and rhythms from the blues are like the musical DNA you can find in tons of other genres.
And then you have jazz, which is like the sound of freedom. The number one thing to know about jazz is improvisation, making it up as you go. It's famous for its unique swinging rhythms and these things called blue notes. That's when a musician plays a note just slightly off-key on purpose to give it this really cool, soulful feeling. You'll hear lots of saxophones, trumpets, and pianos, and it can be super fast and wild or really slow and mellow.
So, let's lock in on that term: improvisation. It's literally the art of making up melodies while you are playing, instead of just reading sheet music. The best way to think about it is like having a conversation. You're not reading from a script, right? You're responding in the moment. That's what jazz musicians are doing with their instruments, and it means that no two performances are ever exactly the same.
Okay, now we get to the mid-1900s, and something happens that changes music forever. One invention: the electric guitar. All of a sudden, music could be loud. It sparked a total revolution in sound, giving us rock and soul music.
So, rock and soul are like cousins. They both grew out of the blues, but they took things in different directions. Rock and roll took the energy of the blues and cranked it up to 11 with that new electric guitar. It was all about high energy, dancing, and super catchy choruses. Soul music, on the other hand, took the emotion of the blues and focused it through incredible, powerful singers, drawing a lot of influence from gospel church music.
And speaking of catchy, this is when the chorus really becomes king. You know exactly what a chorus is. It's that part of the song that repeats, the part that gets stuck in your head all day, the part everyone sings along to. It's pretty much the most important part of any great rock or pop song.
All right, now let's fast forward to the digital age. This is where the computer completely changes the game and becomes a musical instrument itself. This shift opens up a whole universe of new sounds and gives us the genres that basically rule the world today: pop, hip-hop, and EDM. First up, pop. It's short for popular music, and that's exactly what it's designed to be. It's kind of like a science experiment in how to make a song as memorable and catchy as possible. Producers use all sorts of technology to craft the perfect beat and make everything sound flawless.
The songs are usually short, they have that verse-chorus structure we just talked about, and yeah, they're almost always tied to big music videos and dance routines.
Now, a huge part of hip-hop is something called sampling. It's a really cool process. It's basically like being a musical detective. First, a producer finds a cool little moment in an old song, maybe just a drum beat or a cool melody. Then they use a computer to grab just that little piece of sound. And finally, they loop it over and over again to create a totally new beat. It's like making a collage, but with sound.
And that brings us to hip-hop itself. At its core, it's defined by rapping. That's rhythmic, rhyming speech over a beat. You've got the DJ, who provides the beats, and the rapper, also known as an MC, who delivers the lyrics. But what's super important to understand is that hip-hop is way more than just music. It's a whole culture with its own style of dance, art, and fashion. And there's no denying it's one of the most powerful and influential genres on the planet right now.
So what happens when you take traditional instruments almost completely out of the picture? Well, you get music made almost entirely by computers, which we call electronic dance music, or EDM for short.
Yeah, EDM is basically the official soundtrack for huge music festivals. It's all made using electronic gear like synthesizers and computer software. The whole point is to get you to move, so it almost always has a super steady, loud beat that's perfect for dancing. A lot of EDM tracks don't even have lyrics. It's all about the energy of the sound itself. And it's a huge category, including everything from house and techno to dubstep.
Okay, so we've focused a lot on music from America and Europe, but it's so important to remember that music is a global thing. Every culture has its own unique sounds. So let's take a quick look at one more genre from somewhere else and think about what's next.
So let's head to Jamaica for a minute to talk about reggae. The absolute signature sound of reggae is its offbeat rhythm. So in most music, the strong beat is on the 1 and the 3. Think 1, 2, 3, 4. But in reggae, the guitar or piano emphasizes the weak beats in between, the ands. So it's more like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That's what gives it that unmistakable, relaxed, swaying feeling.
So after all that, why should we even care about genres? Well, it's because there's so much more than just simple labels. They're a direct link to history and to different cultures all around the world. They're also an amazing tool to help us find new artists and songs we might totally fall in love with. And at the end of the day, they're just one of the most powerful ways humans have to express themselves. So we've covered a ton of ground here, but really, this is just the beginning. The world of music is absolutely massive, and there are always new sounds to discover. So the real question is, what new genre are you going to check out next? Go explore.